From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and WJack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, December the 23rd, the year of our Lord, 2015. And now, here they are, in person, and still waiting for Santa Claus.
That's right.
Jim and Rich.
That's right. We're breathless with anticipation. John's trying to change the call letters again. Notice that? It was just,
you know what? I actually what happened? I looked at when he said WJack FM at first. I looked at, and John's got, even though he does this on a regular basis, and the only thing he changes is, either we're still alive and breathing, or we're waiting for Santa Claus, or
turkey,
waiting for the turkey. I found it interesting. He still reads off of his notes, and I thought that maybe he would conduct a class for hosts of various shows like the Miss Universe.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
I was just about to say that. Reading your notes is important.
Yes.
Because you never know what might come out.
Yep.
And I keep thinking that one, and I keep thinking of that Academy Award show a couple of years ago where John Travolta introduced Idina Menzel as Adele Nazim.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, not being able to read a cue card was important.
Yes.
Hey, before we got into anything, I had just opened up Twitter just to see if there was anything on any sort of news feed. And this first thing right on the top that somebody had just retweeted. Somebody who has the handle DJS_LFC fan _71 tweeted to George Foreman, at George Foreman, did you ever consider a rematch with Ali?
Oh, jeez.
And George Foreman tweeted back, once was enough.
Once was enough. Hey, Jim, do you know what? I wanted to get that. You had texted me yesterday about what I thought about talking about. And I think what I really love is when we talk about some things on the show and then something happens to bring that subject back up. And I was thinking, do you recall, we did a show right after the beginning of the baseball season this year. And if you remember, opening night at Wrigley, I think it was the opening Sunday night game, was Cubs and Cards. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I said this to you or you said this to me, but one of us said, geez, when did Jason Hayward become a member of the Cardinals? And I remember the conversation going something like this. I said, you know what I thought of when I saw Jason Hayward with the Cardinals? I thought of Lou Brock, because my feeling about Jason Hayward at the time was that he was a big prospect that, I'm not saying he did terrible, but I don't know that he lived up to...
He had a good year.
I don't know that he lived up to expectations with the Braves, mm-hmm. and all of a sudden he ends up with the Cardinals. Mm-hmm. Actually, when you look at the price that the Cardinals paid for him, they traded Shelby Miller, and if you look at Shelby Miller's career, he's an average pitcher and a minor leaguer. So they got him.
Shelby Miller has got a nice deal out in Arizona. Yeah. But they got him fairly cheap. And here's my point. You know what? Nobody, when the Cardinals got Jason Hayward, was saying, "Oh my God, the Cardinals got Jason Hayward. They're going right to the World Series." No, it was one of
so I'm wondering where in this year did Jason Hayward go from a guy who was traded for a middle of the pack starting pitcher and a suspect to $180 million ball player?
Yeah, I still don't understand that unless. Great potential. He's what, 26?
26. He is going to go into his peak years. Not even there yet.
He's headed for his peak years. I think the thing that bothers me the most, and let me reach behind and grab this. The Cardinals seem to have this idea, at least the Cardinal team and their players and managers, that they are the epitome of what baseball should be. And they have their rules and everybody should follow them. And
I think the fact that it's going to be very interesting, the first Cubs-Cardinals game this year, if Matheny tells his pitchers to throw at Jason Hayward, because Hayward thought that the core of the Cardinals was getting a little old, and he liked what the Cubs had to offer.
Well, if I was Jason Hayward, I would have probably said, I like what the Cubs have to offer, but I think I would have skipped the criticism of the Cardinals core getting older. And the thing I would say about this, in defense of, I know Mike Matheny was upset about what Hayward said, and you have the paper open to the article where he comments about this. But I would say this: I wouldn't call anybody God's gift to baseball, or
No, but the Cardinals
But I
knew
would
that.
say this: the Cardinals, way more than the Cubs, and way more than almost any team other than a few that I could name, probably could lay claim to that. And if you look at a guy, what I would be feeling as a Cardinal, and again, I don't know that I would have thought anything different than what Mike Matheny thought. I don't know that I maybe would not have said it for publication, but obviously he's irked. But I would say you could pretty much argue a case that Jason Hayward would not even be considered anywhere close to a $180 million ball player if he had not played 1 year with the Cardinals.
Yeah.
He's getting paid on his 1 year with the Cards, not on his 5 previous year with the A's, or the Braves, I should say. And I think that's a fact. When I look at guys like Carlos Beltran, Johnny Peralta, they'll grab guys like Mark Reynolds, and those guys all seem to be able to perform at a much better level. I'm not going to say higher, but better level when they're with the Cards than when they're with other organizations. I think the Cards have a legitimate story to tell when they think that they have the right way of doing things, because I sort of agree with them. And I will be really interested. I'm not going to predict that Jason Hayward will be a dud, but I'm hoping that he's going to be as good a player with the Cubs as he was with the Cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that that's a guarantee.
Yeah. Now I'm just looking at Hayward's career numbers.
His career numbers, he's got about 90-some homers. He's about around a 260 or so career batting average. He's got about
97 home runs.
He's got a 390-something on-base percentage.
No, he's his OBP is 353.
Okay, 353.
His OPS is 784. So his slugging percentage is 431. He does have some pop in his bat. 1 year there was 27 home runs. Mm-hmm. Average-wise, he's ranged between... Last year was his best year in the majors at 293.
Right.
But he's averaged generally between 254 and 277.
I said about 260-something.
Yeah, so he's a 268 lifetime hitter.
Right.
This was the guy. This was the guy who came out with a slash line this past year at 293, 359, and 439, and this is suddenly a $184 million contract.
Yeah, I don't. Although, and I don't know that I would pay for this, but what they're saying is that he's probably the best defensive outfielder, maybe in the game. I don't know. That's. But here's the question that I would bring up on that. When you play 80-some of your games in Wrigley Field, I'm not sure that you need to have the best defensive outfielder at any of the 3 spots. I mean, you need a good defensive outfielder, but the point would be it's not like Wrigley Field has got and never has had an outfield that was where there was a lot of room to roam, so to speak.
If you're saying he's the best defensive outfielder... I don't know. Do you think a 988 fielding percentage for an outfielder is anything?
Yeah, it's good. He's very he's known as one of the best defensive outfielders in the league, and that's one of the big things for them. I put it this way: you could see it if say if Kyle Schwarber is going to continue to be an outfielder, and this guy is going to say play center, which I hope he does.
Which
I hope they're not going to move Baez to center.
No, I think he's going to. I think he's going to be your Hayward's going to be your center fielder, and as long as Soler's still here, he's going to be your right fielder.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, yeah. And put it this way: if it's going to be Schwarber and Soler in the corners, then you're going to need a really good defensive.
You need a good
center
defensive
fielder.
center fielder.
I don't think Frankie Baumholtz is available anymore, but.
Well, I believe as late as 1967, he was still seen laying in the outfield.
Yeah. So, but
Frankie Baumholtz was an outfielder, a center fielder for the Cubs in the late 40s, early 50s, and he had Hank Sauer rather on one side, and Ralph Kiner on the other.
Two very good hitters, but defensively challenged.
Oh my gosh!
So Frankie Baumholtz was known as a guy who had to run his rear end off.
He took 5 years off his career.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Jim. Now, I wanted to bring that up because, again, it's something that we had commented about when initially we saw Jason Hayward with the Cards. So I thought, hey, you know what? We were onto something a little bit there, and it makes for an interesting line of conversation. The other thing that I wanted to say, unless you've got more to say about Hayward.
No.
One of the, of course, I said I wanted to talk about the Bears.
Well, there was one other thing I wanted to get on in baseball before we do it, but finish off your thought if you had anything. Okay. The Sox trade for Frazier. Do you think they gave up too much in the way of prospects?
I think they gave up. They're probably their only decent prospects.
Yeah, I thought so too.
The other thing is, you never know how these things turn out, but I'm going off what I saw last year. In retrospect, a lot of the moves they made look good on paper, but they didn't pan out in reality, and I think there was a good reason for that. What I'm interested in is I think the Sox, it's like, the old term, just throw money at it, you think it's going to go away. Do these things make sense, what they're doing? Frazier is obviously going to be an upgrade at third.
Right.
But now you move Brett Lawrie over to second, where he's got a little experience, but not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But how is all what they're doing fit together? Okay, now instead of Tyler Flowers, you've got Navarro and Avila.
Yeah.
But
which they think is an upgrade.
But how much of an upgrade is it really?
Honestly, I don't know. And when you hear Rick Hahn say, we've done really well over the years drafting pitchers,
mm-hmm.
but we haven't done very well at position players.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do? You give up your best pitching prospect.
Yeah, right.
And two decent position players.
Right.
For a guy who hit, granted, 35 home runs last year, but he was a .255 hitter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out where they're going.
I don't think, you know what, Jim, I think I'm not going to say they're in a panic because I don't think they're there, but I think their philosophy is, and you can understand it, Sox fans are not as forgiving as Cubs fans. So you're not going to have people in the seats, and no matter what anybody says, I know they make their money from TV revenue and all other different sorts of revenue. It's not the people in the seats that count so much anymore. But you still need that fan base to make everything else work for you. Sox fans are not going to come to U.S. Cellular for 4 or 5 years to see the Sox rebuild like the Cubs fans were willing to do.
Right.
So the Sox are in a perpetual state of, you know what, we always have to at least make the fans see that we're trying for a contender.
Right.
But just by I sat down and I looked. Melky Cabrera is not from the organization. Adam Eaton's not from the organization. Abisail Garcia, not from the organization. Todd Frazier, not from the organization. Brett Lawrie, not from the organization. Adam LaRoche, not from the organization. Right. Deandre Navarro, Alex Avila, not from the organization. Right. How are all? I mean, the big question mark is they're all good players. How do they fit together? That's the problem.
That's the issue, and the fact. I mean, this trade was, even though Rick Hahn is the general manager, this trade smacked so much of Kenny Williams. Kenny Williams type trade where you give up, where you strip your farm system to get one player that on paper you think should help you, but doesn't always.
No, as good as fine a player as Todd Frazier is, it's not like you gave up your 3 best prospects for Miguel Cabrera or something like that.
Right.
I mean, you gave him up for Todd Frazier, who's a good player, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying he's not going to have an impact, but I don't know for sure.
And a lot of the, I know from listening to the radio and some other things, some of the players have said that were on the team last year that keep us together, and we promise that 16 won't be the same as 15. I don't know.
Well, Jim,
and I'm not speaking. I'm not a Sox fan. I mean,
think about this though, Jim. They'll always there's that old adage, and I think there's something to that you have to be strong up the middle.
Yeah.
Well, and they're talking about defense, and if you get some hitting, that's good too. But, okay, your center fielder hasn't changed. Now your shortstop and your second baseman are going to be probably Saladino and Laurie, or maybe Laurie and Sanchez, or a combination. Your catching is Navarro and Avila. And I'm not really sure defensively if that's an upgrade or a wash or whatever, as opposed to Tyler Flowers. But I would say I think there's a reasonable argument that defensively, at least, you're not even going to be as good up the middle as you were.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think so either. Oh, they don't listen to us.
That's good though.
Well, it's good that they don't.
It gives us more stuff to talk about.
It gives us things to talk about and gives us things to complain about, because as I've said before, every time we do this show, we're 2 guys in search of a topic to talk about for 60 minutes, and somehow we manage to kill the hour.
I tell you what, I over the course of how many years now have we done this show? 2, 3?
Couple 2, 3 years. John goes, yeah, I guess.
And we're not guys who will go back and listen to what we said or back in the archives, but I think we've been
I don't listen to me.
fairly good at, hitting some things right on the head. One of the things I know that we talked about earlier in the year on the Bears season, and I think initially our conversation, the Raiders were going to be the team that was coming up the week we had the broadcast, and they had made some initial progress, and they're still making progress. They're 6-8, we're 5-9. But I look in the paper, and I see, geez, gloom and doom. We've had three bad games in a row after the Packers game. But I would say, I remember talking about this, Jim, and we talked about the Raiders, and I said the Bears will either in the future or this year be in the same situation where you're going to have games that they play because they are a team that's trying to find their identity. They're trying to find where guys fit on the team. But you're going to have weeks where you're like, wow, man, fantastic, they're getting it. And then you're going to have weeks where, oh, my God, what's happening? And that's what's happening right now.
And that's what's happening right now. And the line this weekend.
Yeah.
The offensive line this weekend was, good Lord.
Yeah.
That was god-awful.
No. But you know what? I tell you what, somebody was telling me that Obradovich and Hampton went crazy on the show, knocking people. I would say this, I'd like to see what their ratings are because I think that's probably more of a ratings thing. But if you really sit down, yes, was Sunday's game a bad game for the Bears? I think it was a bad game all the way around. But does that mean that they're not improving or not improved? I don't believe that. I think they've improved.
I think they're improved. I think they're better coached.
Yeah, much.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Do they have a lot of talent on that team? No, not really.
No.
I mean, you cut away everything. If you look at the players, most of them are.
No,
I wouldn't even call them.
They've got a lot of guys who are free agents. I mean, when you look at Callahan, Jones, who didn't play last week, Temu, Anderson, and there's probably guys that I'm not thinking of, but those are guys who are playing some key positions on defense that aren't even guys who were drafted by anybody.
Right.
So, that you got Shea McClellan, who's on his this is his third different position.
This is his third different position, and he proves he stinks at all of them.
Yeah. Well, I see. I don't agree with that. I heard one of the big raps by Hampton on McClellan was this guy doesn't make a play and this and that. Well, you know what? Dan Hampton should be the first one to have a little bit of thought about this. Shea McClellan, if I'm not mistaken, missed 2 or 3 games not that many weeks ago because of a knee injury. Now, could it possibly be he's not making plays because he's not fully healthy? I don't see them.
Very possible.
I don't see them burning McPhee, who's not making as many plays because he's playing hurt also.
Yeah, that's
so. Why are they wrapping McClellan when he's injured and not making plays? McPhee's not making plays anymore either
because
he's injured.
Because McClellan is easy to wrap because he's been wrapped since he came into the league.
Exactly.
So I mean, it's like the target is there, and no matter what, it's not going to be any better for him.
Yeah, what I would say is, do all due respect to Ed Obradovich and Dan Hampton, really good players as pros. But I put my faith in Vic Fangio.
Oh,
who's an excellent defensive coordinator. And if he thinks that McClellan is a guy that's worth putting in that spot, then I'm going to go with him.
Yeah. I would put my faith in Fangio for what he does and Adam Gase for the offense. Mm-hmm. Because I got to tell you that no matter what anybody can say about him, I think Jay Cutler's played really well.
Well, if you didn't have Jay Cutler, then you probably are talking about a team that's got maybe 1 win.
Right.
But, everybody who's, all of a sudden upset that the Bears lost 3 in a row and are 5-9 when maybe after the Packers win, you could have reasonably thought, hey, this is possibly a team that could sneak in the playoffs. Don't forget that there's probably at least 4 games, and maybe, and I haven't counted, but I'll just say 4 off the top of my head, that could have gone the Bears' way, and you look at a 9-5 team instead of a 5-9 team.
Yeah.
So I think, coaching-wise, I give the coaches very good grades on what they've done, and with a few breaks here or there, with a young team that really hasn't found a way to win, you could be 9-5, so you could have a real obvious improvement. You're not going to have that record-wise. And I got to give John Fox credit. He says, this is an outcomes-based business. So 5-9 is 5-9. He's owning up to it. And he's not making, he's not Dave Wannstedt. Well, we could be 9-5 if,
and the pieces are in place.
He's owning it. That's right.
He's right that he does it. And I think, you made the comment either on one of these shows or a text back and forth, one of our texts back and forth, that you said these guys this year, the front office and John Fox, they're going to cut and paste all season and start to get their guys in place.
Yeah.
And you also have to realize you have had prior to this year probably about 10 pretty lousy drafts.
I don't know about that.
I can't think of anybody that really stood out over the last years, over the prior regimes. But when you look at the draft this year, you've got some guys who have made an impact. Mm-hmm. You've got a running back who may become your feature back.
Yeah.
Next year or the year after. In Langford. You've got some guys on defense. You've got some guys playing in the line that have contributed this year. Mm-hmm. And may contribute down the road. You're going to have to do this for a few years.
Yeah, I think so.
I can't see. I can't see. Although a couple of good signings, a couple of good drafts, a couple of miracles. We've seen 5-11 teams turn into 11-5 teams and go to the playoffs.
Here's the thing, Jim, that none of us, because we're not there every day, can see, is that, say, take a guy like Charles Leno, or take John Timu, who I think led the team in tackles last game with his first
I think
first
it was
game.
Przinski.
Okay,
And where the hell did
Przinski?
And where did he come from?
He has been with a couple teams. I think he was with Jacksonville at one point. He's been with a couple teams, a special teams ace, and then when Antrell Roll has been out, they plugged him in at the safety spot. And he's been there and played pretty well, from what I could see. I think the thing that's important is when you look at guys like Leno or Timu or Anderson or Jones or Callahan, Kyle Fuller, all young guys. Przinski, who's still a pretty young guy. The other safety, Amos. I think it's hard to judge exactly where those guys, when they're going to start to get it and really become good pro players.
Mm-hmm.
And if, say, you get a reasonable number of those guys next year for it to click in and them starting to be, good pro players, then the overall team play could go up quickly.
No, Timu, you were right. Timu had 8 tackles last week. Przinski had 7.
Okay. So, but at any rate, I think that's where it's hard for us sitting on the outside to judge how quickly are these guys going to develop, because that's going to be the key thing. Plugging in a few free agents isn't going to do it. Next year's draft isn't going to do it.
No.
But some of these guys, like I say, you got Charles Leno, who's playing left tackle, which is probably, from the quarterback's point of view at least, the most important of the 5 interior lineman positions. You got Aronis Grasu at center, another very important offensive line position. You got Kyle Long, who's already been a Pro Bowler at guard, learning a new position. Mm-hmm. So how quickly, what's the learning curve for those guys?
Right.
On defense, you got guys like Christian Jones, John Anderson, John Timu, Bryce Callahan, the safety, what's his name? Adrian Amos?
Amos.
All playing really key spots on defense. How fast is the learning curve? Shea McClellan playing a new spot for himself.
Sure.
How quick is their learning curve going to be?
Yeah.
When those guys start to take those next steps, then the team will rise. If those guys are not going to take those steps, then it's going to take a few years. Don't count on the draft. Don't count on a couple of free agents.
No.
You got to count on those guys right there.
You got to count on some of these guys to grow.
Right.
The other thing you have to think of too, what difference would it have made with a healthy Alshon Jeffrey all year?
Well, I'll tell you what.
A healthy Kevin White.
Alshon, we're going to have to. Here's the one thing. I'm going to get into the and I don't know that they talked about this guy, but I'm going to get into the Hampton Obradovich mode. We're going to have to find out what kind of heart Alshon Jeffrey's got, because this guy, it seems to me, is I'm thinking of Jadeveon Clowney when I think of Alshon Jeffrey, because it seems like his contract,
this is his
contract is more important than contributing to this team.
Yeah, that's actually, as soon as I said that, I thought, wait a minute, he's in a contract here.
Yeah.
And Kevin White. Eddie Royal was expected to play some part as your number 2, your number 3 receiver. And how many games has he missed this year?
He's barely played any games.
Right.
I'll tell you what, if the media really was not in the business of trying to drum up sales, so to speak, and they were more in a position of really trying to figure these things out, I really think that the Bears at 5 wins and with a potential 8 or 9 wins have done an outstanding job. Now put it this way, over a period of time, with a lot of these young guys playing, have some of the deficiencies started to stand out? Have some of the other teams started to take advantage of them? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that doesn't mean that it's an overall failure. I don't think it is.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, there have been some positive signs, and there's been some things that we've seen on this field, just from a coaching standpoint, that far exceeds anything we've seen the last couple of years when Dr. Death was here. And let's take a break.
Yep.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, December the 23rd, the year of our Lord, 2015, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois. And now back to Jim and Rich.
Still waiting for Santa Claus.
Are you listening, Steve Harvey? Okay.
And did you see on his tweets he referred
Yeah.
he referred to Miss Philippians?
Yeah, Miss Philippians. I heard
And he
about
spelled Columbia wrong.
that. Yeah. God.
Oh, some of the memes that have come out have been hysterical. There was one, somebody had a picture of Oprah from that show when she gave away a car, and she's standing up there yelling, "You're Miss America," or "You're Miss Universe, you're Miss Universe, everybody's Miss Universe."
Hey, Jim, are we? Do you have any more to say about the Bears?
I don't know.
I
don't know. We've got 2 more games. I think it's been a year. I think overall, when you look at it, I mean, a lot of people were looking at this team and said, "Oh my God, they'll be lucky if they win 3 games."
Yeah, there were a lot of people predicting just that.
And they hit a stretch during the year, which gave us some hope.
Sure.
I did not really. I have stayed away from post-game radio because, doggone it, I miss Uncle Fuzzy and Obie.
Yeah.
Although somebody has said if you want true meatball goodness, just listen to Mike North on The Drive.
Oh, God.
After a football
can
game, if
imagine
you
that.
want all that yummy meatball-y goodness.
Yeah, that would be real meatball goodness, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I tried listening to the show on WGN, and I just...
Yeah, I don't think
I can't get into it.
I don't think their ratings are very good.
I can't get into it, and I really have not listened to... I've not listened to Hub, Olin Kreutz, and Big Cat Williams after the game. Although, during the week, when they have been on separately on different score shows, they're very good to listen to.
Well, you know, I was starting to really warm up to Hub Arkush a little bit until the week prior to the Redskins game. He had an article in the Sun-Times saying how the Redskins need to change their name. And I said, you know what, you're right off the list, totally off. We don't need any of that. So Hub, just, talk about what you know, which is probably not much. But
No, I always give Hub credit for the things he talks about.
Uncle Fuzzy didn't have much use for Hub, though.
Well,
He said, Hub should actually know as much as he thinks he knows. But
you enjoyed that book, didn't you?
yeah, I love that book.
Isn't
Jim.
that a great?
was
Wasn't that a great
read.
book?
Yeah,
We're talking about
Kopic and
we're talking about Chet Kopic's book that he wrote and was completed just before Doug Buffone passed away this past spring, on Doug's 50 years with the Bears, and it's a real entertaining read.
Jim,
We suggest. I will say again. I'll suggest to anybody pick
Yes.
that up. You will enjoy it.
I don't think that the print was barely dry. I think before Doug passed away, that book got right in under the wire because why I'm saying that is there were some comments that he made about John Fox and what he thought was going to happen with this regime, which were very positive, and so Uncle Fuzzy obviously was still alive when Fox and Pace came on board. And so Kopic and Buffon got this book done right under the wire, because then Doug, it couldn't have been that many more months before he passed away.
I think you may have been talking weeks.
Yeah, it could have been.
You may have been talking weeks. I know. If you look at comments on Facebook and that, it still hits him hard. It still hits Kopic hard that Doug is gone.
Sure. Well, as for the dearth in post-game entertainment, I'm just going to put it out there. For the right price, Jim and I are available.
That's right. Well, come on. John's napping. He goes, John's going, no. I'm sorry. No, I need a nap right now.
Yeah. Well, we take you with us as producer, director, John.
That's right. We'll do it from Fanny's on Montrose Avenue.
Yeah, now that would really make it.
We'll be the only ones. They go to bars, we go to a coffee shop.
That's right.
We go to a coffee shop and a bakery.
That's right.
There you go.
But you can BYOB there, so.
All right, and we certainly will.
Jim, I was going to ask you, I noticed, and I find it extremely interesting with the way Tom Thibodeau was sort of forced out of the Bulls job.
That was my next topic.
That Jimmy Butler seems to be pining for the type of coach that he's not saying Tom should be back, but he's sort of like that sort of coach.
We need to be coached hard.
Coached hard, right.
And I don't know quite what that means.
Well, I think what I think it means, Jim? Any coach who is successful, no matter what you see as their outward persona, I know in my mind I always think of the contrast, at least on the sideline, between Tom Landry and Vince Lombardi. Tom Landry was looked at as he was the stoic, and Lombardi was more emotional. But I think no matter who the coach is, most of the successful coaches hold their team to a certain standard. And I'm not saying Fred Hoiberg isn't doing that, but I think in Jimmy Butler's mind, it seems to me that Hoiberg's not doing that.
It seems to be that case, and a lot of people look at this, and it may be just a comment on the way the East is, that a lot of people are trying to figure out how the Bulls are actually 15-11. Because you've got one group that runs out there that can play offense but can't play defense.
Mm-hmm.
You got another group that goes out there that's the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And there doesn't seem to be anything cohesive in there. You've got Derrick Rose, who's averaging 13.5 points a game. But his shooting percentage is 37.2.
Well, there's another problem. I think that Thibodeau, what I'm at least trying to read in between the lines, because you hear Jimmy Butler talk, then a lot of times you'll hear Derrick Rose comment. Not so much any of the other players. Once in a while Noah or maybe Gasol. But what I'm sort of reading in between the lines is that Thibodeau, whether they liked them or didn't like them, had their attention. And it seems to me that Hoiberg, this has been sort of an ongoing thing. Derrick Rose, I think what Jimmy Butler is sort of saying, and what I'm understanding, if the papers are correct, Butler and Rose get along as individuals, but Butler does not think much of Rose's work ethic. Okay, and I could see I understand that. I've been in that same situation with other people, and I'm sure they felt the same about me. But I think what Thibodeau had was everybody's ear, and what I'm continuing to read in the papers is that Derrick Rose is sort of playing Derrick Rose's game, and he's not playing Fred Hoiberg's game.
He's trying to play Derrick Rose's game. He's trying to play Derrick Rose's game, and he's just not capable of playing it anymore. Or consistently, let's just say, not capable of playing it anymore.
Well, I think there's that, Jim, and I also think, though, that whatever Hoiberg is selling, it doesn't seem like Rose is buying.
No.
Mm-mm. And I think what Jimmy Butler is saying, whatever the system is, that maybe Hoiberg's got to make sure that whatever everybody's supposed to be doing, that they do it. And that, I think, is his complaint. if if Derek thinks that he can play the game he wants to play and not the game the coach wants him to play, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. Because something like that soon becomes, a team-wide. It couldn't become an epidemic. Let's put it that way.
It can, and then you're going to have somebody who's lost control of the locker room.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that he
and
hasn't already.
And I'm not so sure that already.
That.
I'm not so sure that hasn't already happened.
Yeah, I want to get back to your comment about the Bulls. What are they, 15-11?
15-11. They are third. Wait a minute, I just lost it. They are third in the Central, half a game behind Indiana.
And
3.5 behind Cleveland.
Jim, you're going to understand this as soon as I lay it out there. But one of the big complaints I've had with the way people approach sports, whether it's professionals or whether it's amateurs, and I hate it, and maybe we talked about it between ourselves or on the show, but it's almost like roll the ball out there and whoever is better wins mentality, which I hate because you're not always going to be better. And if you unless you're the team with absolutely the most talent, that's not going to work for you. What I'm saying is with Thibodeau, they won games probably that talent-wise they shouldn't have won.
Right.
With Fred Hoiberg, I'm getting the feeling it's the roll the ball out there mentality. And if we're better than this team on this night, we'll win. And if we're not better, we're going to lose. And it can't be that way if you're going to be a really successful team.
Yeah.
You've got to beat some teams on some nights when you're not better. You got to find a way to do it some nights. And if I have a criticism of the Bulls, I'm going to say they're not doing that. They're winning on the nights that they're better. They're losing on the nights they're not better. They're never winning on the nights where they're not better, but they just somehow get it done.
And I think it's the atmosphere. It's the atmosphere that's developed around the team. If you want an interesting article, I can't remember if it's the current edition of SI or the prior one. They've got an article right now with Luke Walton about Luke Walton running the Warriors, and the fact that right now you're looking at them and they are 26-1, and how they all have developed this culture where everybody, obviously you got a great star in Steph Curry, but that's not the dominating portion of that team. Everybody's works together. Everybody's got a great culture. Everybody gets along. And you got Luke Walton who's running the team right now for Steve Kerr while he gets over whatever problem he had, I think back surgery, and he's been getting some really debilitating headaches. But this team just goes out and does their job.
Well, think of who you have there. I'll name five portions of that team. Steve Kerr, who's not there, but comes from some great years with the Bulls, and then was with the Spurs.
Right.
Okay, so he's got some good background.
Right.
You've got Luke Walton but look who his father was, and look who his father played for.
And look who Luke Walton played for.
Yes.
Phil Jackson.
Yeah. Then you've got Steph Curry, whose father was a professional,
right.
So he's got probably a more maturity than most. You got Klay Thompson, whose father was a fine pro, Michael Thompson,
right?
And you got Draymond Green, who comes from Michigan State,
outstanding
with Tom
program.
Izzo.
So you've got guys, first of all, who understand, have respect for the game,
right?
And and understand what it means to have respect for each other,
right?
Which isn't present with what we're seeing on the Bulls.
No, I don't see. And you know what? The thing about the Bulls is not that it can't be there, but you can't take a team that is, got their pedal to the metal all the time with a coach like Thibodeau, and say, well, you know what? Maybe we need to loosen this up a little bit, because really the only reason that the team was effective with Thibodeau is when you look at the personnel. Even say, who are the best players? Jimmy Butler, Derrick Rose, Pau Gasol, Joakim Noah. So say those are your four over the years, your best players, let's just say. And I know Gasol wasn't with us for those years. But those guys all are sort of, in a way, not saying they're not talented, but they almost have a grinder mentality about them. You almost need to be grinders to get the best out of them. And when all of a sudden you take, the foot off the gas pedal, I think you're getting. Well, obviously, you're not getting your best from them. I don't know. Am I saying that so it's understandable?
No, I understand what you're trying to go at here.
Uh-oh. What do you got going, Jim?
No, I got I got my friend the architect after we're done here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I just want to let him know
okay.
Around what time I'll be there.
But at any rate, I think you have a team that was made up of guys who at least had the image of being pretty hard-nosed, and now you're saying, oh, no, we're going to play more of like a brand of, pickup basket. I'm not saying it's pickup basketball, but we're gonna do a whole different thing here.
Yeah, and I mean, the only thing that I've seen that, and I haven't watched the Bulls that much this year, but the only thing I can think of with the philosophy in that, it's not quite as extreme as Paul West had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
It's not the extreme that you got to shoot in 6 seconds.
Right. No, for everybody who's listening, Paul Westhead was a former coach with the Lakers and the Bulls, and had been a college coach, and was really into the fast break game, to put a label on it. Regardless of whether his team was built for that or not, they utilized that, and he had a little success, but then over the years, not so much success.
And then again, you're coming into something, and we've talked about this before. When coaches try to force their system on a team that might not be that might not be built for that system.
Yeah,
I mean we've talked about that. I mean, one of the examples I heard most recently was people talking about the fact that Jeff Samardzija had such a lousy year with the White Sox, but he was working for a pitching coach, Don Cooper, who basically said, "Do it my way."
Yeah.
Whereas when even though he was never that great, I never thought he was that great on the north side, but he had Chris Bosio, who Bosio said, "Well, let's look at your strengths and work from there."
Now, talking about that, we sort of flipped into another subject, but I'm glad you said it. Now, my guess would be that Jeff Samardzija going to the Giants and seeing what the Giants do with people that they, maybe are rehab projects, if you want to put it that way. Samardzija may actually have landed in one of the best places for him that he could be, in San Francisco, with Bruce Bochy as the coach.
Yeah.
And because I think what will happen is he's got his best chance of taking his natural talent, which is great, and having the right combination of things for him to have his best years. Because in San Francisco is another spot where they know what they're doing out there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think when I see that they get a guy like Jeff Samardzija, they get a guy like Johnny Cueto, I think those guys will prosper where they're at.
I think so too. You have especially when they know what they're doing out there, and you have a manager who's attuned to his pitchers,
right,
and has always had that reputation,
right. But let's go back to you. And we were talking about the Bulls, but
let's go back to that.
But I agree with you. I think we're talking about maybe the proverbial putting the round peg into a
square peg into a round hole, or the other way around.
But that's sort of what I see happening, and that's one reason why I would say I'm not going to criticize Hoiberg at this time, because he's actually, what I would do is say, I don't know what their plans are down the road, but initially I would question Paxson and Foreman picking Hoiberg to be their coach with the group of players that he's inherited. Now, it's interesting to see Doug McDermott has made some strides, and he's going to probably be a guy who's going to be a keeper in this system that Hoiberg likes.
He might. You've already got Paul Gasol, who I think has said he's going to opt out
Yeah, this is not
year.
going to be for him.
This is not going to be for him.
Yeah.
I don't know about,
Well, you got guys like Gasol, Noah. This is not his brand of basketball.
And he's hurt now, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he's dealt before the end of the season.
That wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah.
That wouldn't.
I don't know for what, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's although Joakim Noah probably has some value for somebody out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but I don't know that it seems that with his continuing problems with his legs, who knows how another team would view using him.
Yeah.
Not to say he wouldn't be valuable in some capacity, but I think he may be at the point physically where he's a spot player. He's like I'm not saying he's Bill Walton, but he's maybe like Bill Walton at the end of his career where, hey, do you want him on the team? Yeah, but you want him for 10 or 12 minutes, not for 30 or 40.
Right. And I mean you're at the point here when you think about it. There's two things that there's one thing I certainly look at with the Bulls, salary cap wise, they're like caught in salary cap purgatory here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are.
They
are.
And with the drafting, with the record, once again, they seem to be caught in NBA draft purgatory.
They really are. Although I have to say, the one thing I could really take my hat off to them for is obviously where you draft, you're not always going to get somebody good. But you know what? Jimmy Butler has turned out good.
Yeah.
And I think McDermott will be good. Now, we had other guys in there who didn't turn out so well, but drafting where they normally draft, which is, 20-something, how much is there really going to be?
That's the problem. That's the problem. That's where you have to start looking. You have to have strong scouting, because that's when you're going to have to start looking at overseas ball players.
Mm-hmm.
You can find those occasional gems at the college level, down that low.
Yeah,
because really,
sure.
when you think about it, there's a lot of talent in the mid majors.
Yeah,
that don't always get the great pub,
right?
That the elite teams do.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You'll hear about guys.
Does it seem to you though, Jim? I remember the old joke used to be in the NFL that they would look at the All-America lists or the Sporting News or All-America, and that, the general managers would draft based on those lists, and that was close to being true in some cases.
That was close to being true.
But it almost seems like, as sophisticated an era as we're in, it almost seems to me that's almost the way things are done in the NBA.
It still can be done. I mean, granted, I can give you an example. It happened many years ago, but LaRue Martin from Loyola was the number one pick in the draft on the basis of one game.
Yeah. I mean, that happens. Because
a scout happened to be there that night, and he dropped 40-something on somebody.
Well, there was of course I didn't know we were going to be on this subject, but I looked this guy up a while ago, and his name still won't stick with me. But the Celtics, I don't think it was the past draft, but the draft before that, drafted a kid out of Kentucky. And I think he was actually the sixth man for Kentucky, and he was either a freshman or a sophomore. Lefty, I think. Thought he was a pretty good shooter. But here's a guy who's a sixth man, a freshman, hasn't really played. I mean, he plays his minutes, but he's not playing extensive minutes. And he ends up being the first-round draft choice of the Celtics. And I think he's probably still with the team. But I'm thinking, what are you really getting there? Are you talking about a sixth man on a college team, obviously a really good college team, but you're also talking about a guy who's still really young. So not only has he not got a lot of minutes, but he's not got a lot of maturity, and that's your number one draft choice. I want to say can't think of the guy's name, but I could picture him, but I can't think of his name. And I'm thinking, what are you getting here? I mean, are you buying? I'm not saying that what Calipari is selling is wrong. That's his hook to get guys to come to Kentucky. You're going to get drafted. So, but are you drinking the Kool-Aid? I mean, come on. This guy's a number 1 draft choice. That's what they're drafting.
That's the way they're drafting.
I mean, it's
and you're right. The analogy is perfect to the way the NFL used to be.
Right.
Now is the time. Then certainly for the Bulls, like I said, being caught in the purgatory that they always seem to be. It's you got to have good scouting. You got to have good player development. And I give them credit for the fact that they're going to have a developmental league team right in the area.
Oh, that'd be good. That'll be interesting.
That's going to be more interesting to watch. You just mentioned that. I just happened to glance down at the Sun-Times today, and by the numbers, the comic in the bleachers. It's a basketball player sitting there at a press conference, and the caption is, "I had a great game, but hey, it's not about my stats. It's about how much money I make every time I walk onto that court."
Yeah.
Hey, and you know what? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to imagine with the TV number, or with the TV contract that's going to kick in next year, and how much more money that's going to be available salary cap wise. What are they talking about? 15 to 20% increase in the salary cap
in which league?
NBA.
NBA. Wow.
What is that going to do to the players, and 2, their mindset?
Mm-hmm.
The only one that I always, and he's been criticized so much over the years, but when you read about him and you look at some of the things that he says and does,
LeBron James.
LeBron is still a down to earth guy.
I'd say it seems like that to me.
I saw a piece on Facebook a few days ago that they were in town playing Boston, and during a timeout, the Celtics public address announcer introduced a young man who was sitting courtside, who was MVP in a recent Special Olympics basketball tournament. And LeBron happened to notice that before he went out there, he happened to notice the shoes that the kid had on were designed. He knew they were designed for people who could not tie their own shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And he noticed that. And before the timeout, when the timeout broke, when the huddle broke, and before he went out on the court, back on the court, he made a point of going over and speaking to the young man and shaking his hand and congratulating him. And after the game, he gave the kid the shoes he wore. Well, that's a classy guy.
I think LeBron, I mean, most of these guys who are your top players in whatever sport can have a tendency to be sometimes edgy guys, because that's sort of maybe part of what puts them over the top. But LeBron, I mean, they're not all that way. And LeBron seems to be an actual good guy.
Yeah.
And, God bless him for that. There was one other thing I wanted to mention, Jim. Do you have Monday's paper in front of you or Tuesday's?
No, I got them both.
Hey, look at Monday's paper and the obits, and look at Dickie Moore.
Oh,
Dickie Moore, for everybody who is listening. Dickie Moore is a Hall of Fame hockey player, played with the great Canadiens teams. He was with the teams that won 5 consecutive Stanley Cups between 1956 and 60. And played with some great players, the Richard brothers. He played
Boom
with
Geoffrion,
Geoffrion,
Doug Harvey, Jacques Plante.
Actually his number 12, he shares the retirement of that number with another great from another era of the Canadiens, Yvan Cournoyer.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was going to say, though, if you look at that article in the second set of paragraphs there,
mm-hmm.
It mentions one year where, I don't know if he led the league in scoring, I think he did, but he had broken his hand in a fight with Marcel Pronovost of the Red Wings. And I started to think to myself, how different. First off, probably neither of them got suspended, even though Dickie Moore broke his hand in the fight. And you know what? It was probably not a big deal that a guy as good as Dickie Moore got hurt. I mean, the world didn't end,
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, I thought it was an interesting thing that that was mentioned in the obit, based on what happened with Odell Beckham over the weekend. where he got three personal fouls, and now the
they suspended
NFL
him.
is suspending him for a game.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, why are they suspending him? This is a rough game. He was getting the rough ride from the guy who was covering him.
Right.
He was, you know what? I'm not going to say what he happened or say this is for everybody, but this was his reaction to it. And he didn't kill anybody. He got in the fight when a football fight, of course, is a notorious thing for nobody ever getting hurt.
Right.
And he had some personal fouls, which hurt nobody but him and his team. Why is he suspended? I mean, can you know what? I'm not saying that there should be a brawl.
No, and why
game,
is and
but
I guess
why can't a man stand up for himself,
right,
and act like a man,
right? And if you're going to suspend him, why didn't you suspend the other player?
Yeah. It's really interesting.
You know, and you've got them coming out on the field before the game with baseball bats, which they said it's just a symbol of how we handle things, and we do that for every game.
Oh, this was the Panthers.
The Panthers
came out with
out with baseball bats.
Okay. Yeah. I would say this, when you're confronted with fire, sometimes you got to fight fire with fire. And to me, Odell Beckham, that's all he was doing.
Yeah.
And now he's the one suspended.
Yeah.
So I you know what? I'll tell you what, I think a lot more of Odell Beckham now than I did before. I know that he's known for a couple of spectacular catches. He is a good wide receiver. I was sort of turned off because I think he was really going Hollywood on us with the dyed hair and all that crap. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what, my estimation of him as a person is way up there because he defended himself the only way that anybody was good. He's the only one who could do it.
Sure.
The referees weren't doing it.
Yeah. I'm glancing, I'm smiling here as I'm looking at this article about Dickie Moore, and I can't remember. Well, first of all, the year after that fight where he was with Marcel Pronovost, he set a league record with 96 points that stood up until Bobby Hull.
Bobby Hull broke it. Yeah.
Broke it. But I'm trying to remember if it was Claude Pronovost or Marcel Pronovost. But Bobby Hull used to talk about the people that used to be his shadows. Mm-hmm. And he says some of them he hated. Busher Watson. Of course, he beat the snot out of Busher Watson.
Yeah.
And then went down to the locker room in between periods and looked at him as they were stitching it up. He said, "I meant to maim you. I didn't mean to kill you." But it was one of them. It was one of the Pronovosts. He said he used to love it because he said he'd talk to him. Pronovost would talk to him all the time on the ice. He said, he says, I'd get the puck and start going, heading up ice, and I'd hear this voice behind me in the French Canadian accent going, "Bobby, slow down, Bobby." Damn it, Bobby, slow down.
I always find it interesting, Jim, though. I think, especially sports like hockey or football, which are, I would say, you have to expect they're pretty violent sports. And when violence happens, everybody gets upset. I mean, hey, you know what? Guys are knocking each other around out there all day. Once in a while, tempers are going to flare a little bit. That's like when Kyle Turley was playing for the Rams. Yeah. And he got in a few fights. And then I read in the paper they're going to send him to anger management. I'm like, he's a pro football player. You're going to send him to anger management? Oh,
I think back of when Mark Gastineau was playing for the Jets. And when he used to sack a quarterback and do his sack dance over it, and how everybody got starting to get aggravated with it. And I can't remember who the lineman was, but when Gastineau went through him, he managed to knock the lineman's helmet off. And Gastineau's doing his sack dance over it. And whoever the lineman was had the helmet in his hand. And as he came around and faced the lineman, this guy wound up with the helmet and hit him right across the head with it. And that was the end of it.
That was the game that was.
That was the game that was. Everybody's got to be so sensitive now.
Yeah, we're all sensitive.
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, hey, we've overstayed our welcome once again. But, John, do you care? Nah. John says, nah, I'm just sitting here. I take a nap while you guys come in. This is kind of any end of the year Christmas and end of the year wishes.
No, my only wish is Merry Christmas to you and Dana, and
Thank
a
you.
Happy New Year, and a
And
safe one, I hope.
Merry Christmas to you and your family, and Merry Christmas to the Doctor of the Dials.
I was going to say Merry Christmas, John, and hope you have a safe trip up to Wisconsin.
You're gonna-
And
How long are you going to be up there? You going to stay up for the whole
Yes, I'm going to go up Thursday morning, and I'll come back Monday morning, and then I'll be home Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then go back up again Thursday, and then come back Monday.
And of course, I think the guy who really, because I don't know how many years ago it is now, I approached him about doing a show and you could say he's the guy who maybe got this thing rolling or helped it to get rolling. Merry Christmas to Kevin Zaflick and his family.
Absolutely, and to his family for all he does, we appreciate it, and for the patience that he shows putting up with our nonsense.
Definitely.
Anybody who's on the radio doesn't pick on the station manager.
I'll be with Kevin in about an hour from now.
Okay, well, send our best wishes along to
I
him.
sure will.
And we'll be back.
I've told everybody that Kevin is my adopted godfather.
There you go. I think he should be your godson. Actually,
Yeah.
you're the older
well,
one.
It wasn't for Kevin, gentlemen, my radio career would have ended October the 10th, 2011,
Well-
when Joe Gentile closed his eyes.
Well, you've got this. You've got all these shows that get done down here. For all the nonsense, and you put up with us, and you do amazing things at Ridgewood for our basketball games and our football games. And we'll kick in again after the first of the year. We got about another, 8 or 9 basketball games to do.
Yeah,
something
we're going to
like
have fun
that.
with that.
We'll always have fun with that. Occasionally, the game we described is actually what's going on the floor.
Yeah.
There's two people I really I really have to say thank you to, and that's Kevin, of course, with Ridgewood WRHS FM, and John Chicando, who came up with the idea of setting up Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network.
Yeah, and
So to those two people, I really want to. My heart goes out to them, and I really want to thank them for keeping my broadcast career alive.
And the fact, too, that we've got a telephone hotline that you can listen to any one of the half a dozen shows on here if you dial 641-715-3800 and then punch in 698-011-pound. And you've got a half a dozen shows you can listen to. Meet the Chicago Historians, the Dawn of Sports, Paranormal Radio, Chicago Junction, us, the Armchair Experts, and Wealth and Wisdom.
That's great. Yeah.
You keep yourself pretty busy there.
Yeah, John, you do.
Yes, I do.
You keep
You do a
yourself
great
pretty
job,
busy.
and we thank you.
Like I told Bob Tricek from Paranormal Radio, because he was here last night, and I told him, I says, you don't find me on the streets because I'm always behind wires or something or another. behind microphones or behind wires of some sort.
Keeps you off the streets, and I think that's what's important. John needs to be kept.
He
off
does.
The
He
streets.
needs to be kept off.
I get worried about him now that I'm not around the neighborhood to keep an eye on him. All right, let's wrap it up. Merry Christmas to all. Happy New Year to all. One other personal note: go Sparty.
Go Sparty.
Go Sparty. And even when I looked at the point, and I got when I looked at the numbers, and I got Michigan State plus 10. Okay,
There you go.
all right, let's wrap it up. Thanks for listening. We will catch you back after. We will catch you again in the new year. Wait a minute. Phone call coming in. Okay, I thought it was somebody important.
Okay.
All right, thanks for listening. We will catch you after the first of the year. We are out of here. We are Taillights.
Jim and Rich, I want to wish you and your families a very, very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. And thank you for a great year of the year 2015.
Oh, it's been our pleasure,
Thanks,
John.
John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, December the 23rd, the year of our Lord, 2015, on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with the WRHS FM sports announcers Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS-FM Norwich, and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Seconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, December the 22nd, the year 2015. On behalf of the entire staff of WRHS-FM Norwich, the John DeVita Broadcast Center, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, I wish everyone a very, very Merry Christmas and a happy, happy, healthy New Year. Thank you for being with us. And this is Jack Frost FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois. Have a good day, everyone.